Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started this afternoon. We have a lot to cover in the next hour, and we want to make sure we get through it all. And we appreciate our legislators being here today. This is a favorite event of many people throughout the year, and we appreciate them giving us their time. So welcome to the November virtual monthly luncheon of the Covington Business Council. I'm CBC Executive Director Pat Frew. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to attend. First of all, I want to show appreciation to our sponsors. First, St. Elizabeth Healthcare, which has been our title sponsor for 2020. In case you missed it, St. Elizabeth's Cancer Center had its ribbon cutting a few weeks ago. St. E's will lead the way in cancer care and provide an even greater emphasis on preventative efforts, genetic screening, personalized treatment with integrative options, and survivor support. It's wonderful having a leading cancer center so close to home and such a great community partner whose vision is to reduce our area's cancer rate and lead Northern Kentucky to become one of the healthiest communities in America. You can learn more at the stelizabeth.com/cancer website. And Charter Communications, which for the last several years has been our legislative sponsor. Thank you very much, Jason Keller, and we'll hear from the aforementioned Jason in a few minutes. He's Charter's President of Governmental Affairs and Regulatory Strategy. So we appreciate both the support of St. Elizabeth and Charter Communications today. I also want to thank all of our CBC board members who are on the call today. In fact, all of them for their hard work and dedication. We appreciate all that you do. Just a quick word about some upcoming events. Next Wednesday evening, we have a CBC social slated for Bourbon House 1841 in Mainstrasse. On November 5th, we'll have our next Heart Tour at Victorian at Riverside, formerly the Covington Ladies Home, followed by a social there in the new unoccupied addition that they're completing. Again, all these are in-person events, but we do want you to register. We do have to kind of make sure that the gatherings have limited attendance in accordance with the governor's restrictions in this pandemic. We are still having our weekly CBC Connects networking meeting virtually every Wednesday, weekday mornings from 9 to 10. This is a great way to introduce yourself to other members, especially if you're a new CBC member yourself. Our next nonprofit Lunch and Learn is Tuesday, November 10th, noon to 1. That is virtual. It's on the topic of recurring donor programs. And you can register for all of these events on our website, www.cbcky.com. Now it's time for our nonprofit spotlight. Thanks to Redwood, my good friend John Francis, the executive director, is here today to tell you the latest going on at Redwood. Welcome, John, and thanks for being a part of today's program. John, do you have your mic muted?
Thank you. I was telling Pat earlier, this is one of my favorite CBC meetings just because of the legislative panelists. It's a privilege for us to be a part of this, and thanks for this opportunity. So what is Redwood? Redwood is a $7 million agency that has about 150 full and part-time staff. We've been in business for over 67 years, providing services to about 800 children and adults with severe and multiple disabilities. We have had and enjoyed broad and deep community support over these many years. And as I have told many of you, Redwood is the most special place I have ever worked. Right, next. So like all of you, I'm sure, Redwood was affected by COVID in different ways. And when COVID, we experienced, like many of you, just a flood of information that was coming at us almost 24/7 from a variety of sources. It was like drinking from a fire hose. A lot of information was coming out, multiple sources, a lot of changes going on, and it was a significant thing for us to manage all that information. As a result,
I had to do the same thing. Yeah.
Our governor executed 2 executive orders, one of which closed all adult day programs across Kentucky, and within a day, The other executive order closed all childcare programs across Kentucky. Consequently, we closed 17 out of our 20 programs in 1 week. That was, as you might guess, very significant. So related to those closures, then we laid off over 80 of our employees. That's about half of our workforce was released. Thankfully, we were able to apply for and get a PPP loan, which had a value of about $1.1 million. And as a result of that, we were able to bring most of those 80 plus employees back onto payroll. And as you probably know, the purpose of that loan was not necessarily to bring people back to work, but get them back to payroll. We were not able to bring everybody back to our facility here in Fort Mitchell for a couple reasons. Some programs were still closed and it was not safe to bring everybody back. So they came back in part, and we rotated people back through the building. We started allowing several people to work from home as well. So since then, the governor reversed those 2 executive orders in June, which allowed us to reopen children's services and adult services. Our census in children's services has slowly grown back to being right at our pre-COVID numbers, and same for our therapy services. And for us, therapy includes occupational, speech, and physical therapy. Our adult census, however, has been the absolute slowest in recovering, and we have only been able to build back up to about half of our pre-COVID census, largely because many of our adult clients live in congregate care facilities, high population density environments like group homes and nursing homes. You know, those are areas or living environments of being at risk to get or give the virus. So, okay. So as a result of that, as you might guess, our revenue has been down from year over year. Despite that, we have been able to successfully manage our expenses. Our 3 program directors have done an outstanding job of this since I've been at Redwood. And as you probably know, probably 70 or 75% of a not-for-profit's budget is personnel related. So we've been able to manage that and keep a balance between service needs, client needs, and availability of staff. We know that to survive, if not thrive, we have to adapt. And we found in some research that those companies that not only survive, but actually thrive compared to other similar agencies in their field, there are 2 distinguishing characteristics, one of which is finding and instituting operational efficiencies, and the other is finding areas for innovation. And we've been able to do both of those. One example of innovations is our migration to using teletherapy for occupational, speech, and physical therapy. So one of the blessings, if you will, of COVID is it's been a good kick in the shin or a good kick in the seat of the pants to innovate and find different ways to meet the needs of our customers outside of traditional ways. We evaluate our strength, our health, our quality in different domains, one of them being financial. And one of our key performance indicators that we're most focused on is our days cash on hand. And when I arrived, we didn't have all that many days of cash on hand. We're running at about 10 days. We set a goal of raising the bar to 90 days, and we were ever so close to that just a week or 2 before COVID hit. Thankfully, our days cash on hand is strong today. We look at that every Monday in a 13-week projection. And right now we're projecting a fairly strong days cash on hand out through the middle of January, although not quite as strong as what we would have been had COVID not hit. And some of you may not know that Redwood is going to be getting a new CEO because I will be retiring at the end of December. Main reasons, my wife and I would like to enjoy our health and live much closer to our 3 grandkids. I'd like to get involved in some volunteering and would like to enjoy the great outdoors of northern Georgia, where we will be landing. I'm guessing that the new CEO will be identified any day or any week. Now there's a plan to have a few weeks of overlap between that person and myself, and I'm prepared for that. So in ending, would like just to say thanks to Pat Frew specifically, Christine, and CBC and all of the Northern Kentucky community for being such avid, strong supporters with time, talent, and treasure over the years. We absolutely cannot do the important work that Redwood does without support from donors, from volunteers, from employees, from the community at large, from our advocates in the legislature. So big thanks to all of you. And Pat again, and Christine, thanks again for this opportunity to showcase the best place I've ever worked. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for all that you've contributed to our community. I know on behalf of all our members that your presence and your leadership in our community is going to be missed. And you deserve this retirement and being with your family in Georgia, but we're really going to miss you, buddy. Thanks for all you've done.
Thank you, Pat.
Great. Thanks, John Francis from Redwood. Now I want to introduce Jason Keller of Charter Communications. He's going to introduce our moderator, Pat Crowley of Strategic Advisors. By the way, got to give Pat a shout out. This week he received the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Community Award, a worthy recognition for Pat for all of his tireless work in the community. So Jason, take it away.
Thanks so much, Pat. And on behalf of the more than 400 Charter Spectrum employees that call Northern Kentucky home, we're glad to again be the legislative luncheon sponsorship. I hope everybody's enjoying your lunch this year. Pat says that we're all going to get filet mignon next year since we didn't have lunch served this year. So we look forward to that, Pat. Being the bridge between two Pats here, it's also a personal honor to introduce our moderator for today, Pat Crowley, who's been a friend for a long time and I know is certainly no stranger to the Northern Kentucky business community and really the state at whole. He's worked for 27 years as a newspaper, magazine, television, and internet journalist, including 16 years as a business writer and political writer for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Most of his time at that newspaper, which is one of the largest in the nation, was spent in the paper's Northern Kentucky and Frankfort bureaus. He has been recipient of numerous awards, and throughout his long career in journalism, Pat has honed a keen and deep knowledge of the political system and the inner workings of government and business. So we look forward to our discussion today. Thank you again for participating, and thank you to our legislators for being part of today's discussion. And with that, I will turn it over to Pat Crowley.
Jason, thank you for that very kind introduction, and Pat, thanks for the congratulations. I don't think I deserve that chamber award, but it certainly was nice. So thanks a lot. Who do we have? I know we had Senator Thayer. Here's our candidates today. Actually, our legislators. We Representative Kim Banta, Representative Kim Moser, Representative Adam Koenig, Representative Buddy Wheatley, and Senators Damon Thayer and Chris McDaniel. Who all do we have on the? I can't see everybody else. Who else do we have on the call right now?
I'm here, Pat. Hi.
Representative, good to see you. Anyone else on yet?
Wheatley is here.
Representative Wheatley. Buddy, how you doing?
Thanks, Pat. How are you?
I'm great.
Damon is here.
Senator Thayer, Floor Leader Thayer, thank you. Majority Leader Thayer, thank you so much for joining us today.
And I am here. This is Kim Moser.
Representative Moser, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. All right, we'll just jump in and see if anybody else gets on. They can jump in the discussion. Senator Thayer, let me start with you as the floor leader. I think we're all just kind of anxious to see what happens. I'm sure the rules haven't been set but with COVID coming up, what's the legislature what's it going to be like down in Frankfort? And do you see any COVID related bills being filed and discussed?
Well, yes, there will be many COVID related bills. And it's too soon to tell what we're going to do in terms of COVID related protocols in the Capitol. We're here at the middle of October, 2.5 months away from session. And I, for one, will be advocating for getting back to as close to normal as we can get this session. I don't think it's a good idea to keep people from their capital. I think that people have a right to be in here to watch their government work and offer their support and opposition to various bills that are up. So we're probably going to have to figure out a way to make that happen. It depends on if we're still in a state of emergency then and how long it lasts. I'd like to see it come to an end yesterday. Don't think we're in an emergency anymore. Just think we need to be in a management situation. So I think in the Senate, as far as our chamber operations, it'll look similar to what we did at the end of the session, right when COVID hit. There's only 38 of us in our chamber, so we can space out and do some distancing. So to be determined on that. I have questions every day from citizens. Are we going to be able to get in the Capitol? Well, I hope so, but I don't know for sure if that's going to happen.
And I want to ask you about the Senate priorities in a minute, as well as the budget, but let me ask one COVID-related question, then I'll go to our other panelists as well. Representative Maddox, who you share a legislative district with, has filed a bill that would basically, I'm going to be broad here, curtail some of the governor's authority to issue executive orders, which arose out of some of the decisions he was making in the spring and summer over COVID. Do you support that bill?
100%. We will pass a bill that will limit the number of days a governor can call for a state of emergency. I don't know if it'll be 15 or 20 or 28 or 30, but there will be a limit on it. And then at the nearing the end of that state of emergency, the General Assembly will have to be called into session and will vote on whether or not it should be extended and for how long. No one person should have this much power over the lives of 4.5 million people. The balance of power between the three co-equal branches of government has been completely upended during this pandemic, and the Constitution and the freedoms and liberties subscribed within do not sleep, even during a pandemic. And I believe that the governor has trampled all over the Constitution using a 1998 law, which was passed regarding states of emergency, but the intent was for regional disasters like tornadoes or floods or ice storms, the kinds of things that we have to deal with from time to time, not to be 200 days in perpetuity, 200 days in counting and in perpetuity. So we're working with House leadership now to figure out which version of the bill we want to go with. So, Representative Maddox's bill is a terrific bill and enjoys a lot of support, and it's certainly drumming up a lot of conversation, and I think that is good. We haven't figured out yet which direction we're going to go. Senator Matt Caslin from Owensboro has a pre-filed bill in our chamber modeled after the Utah law, and it would limit the state of emergency to 30 days. And by the way, this is pretty standard in most states that the legislature has input. The problem is that the people of this Commonwealth don't feel like their voices are being heard through their legislators. You know, senators represent 115 to 120,000 people. Representatives represent 43 to 45,000 people. The governor represents 4.5 million people, and they don't feel like he's listening to them. So, yeah, you're going to see action on that and fairly quickly in January.
All right, let me jump on the other side of the aisle with Representative Buddy Wheatley, Democrat from Covington. Representative Wheatley, what do you think about what Senator Thayer says? Has Governor Beshear trampled on the Constitution? And are you and your caucus in favor of this bill that Representative Maddox has filed?
Thanks, Pat. And it's a pleasure to be on here and to speak to the CBC members and anybody else that's out there. No, I don't agree with Senator Thayer. I don't believe that the governor has trampled upon the constitutional rights. There certainly are a lot of things that we should, as the legislators, have power over as co-equal members of leaders of this state and per our Constitution. Now, the state law that was passed in 1998 and its execution that's going on right now, of course, it should be looked at, as we should look at all laws that we recognize as they go into practice. And this was a very rare situation. But I hope we're not looking at it in a way that is punishable, where we're going to say, hey, we got to make sure this governor is slapped down for this kind of behavior. I hope we're looking at it in a rational way. We say, it doesn't matter which party the governor is. We just look at it and say, yeah, how are other states doing it? How do we protect constitutional rights? How do we have co-equal representation? All of those are good things. You know, in the fire service, what we would do after an emergency, after a big fire, we'd have a postmortem. We'd look at it. We'd look at the things that worked, the things that didn't work. We based our future training on the input that came from lots of people at that time. And that's what I hope we do with this within the next session.
Okay, and while I have you on here, anything you'd like to say about any COVID-related bills that you're working on, your caucus is working on, that you'd like to mention?
Well, some of the bills that are related to COVID have to do with many different areas of what we do in Frankfurt. Some are related to healthcare. Some are related to the voting rights that have recently, through the current and the historic bipartisan agreement between the Secretary of State and the governor that has allowed this early in-person voting and expanded absentee balloting. Some of those things will be in place. There are concerns related to, people being kicked off their insurance, whether that happens on a national level. Are we ready on the state level in case that happens? And what can we do as a state legislature? So those are some of the issues we're dealing with. And there are more. What'll be interesting is to how we're able to, and I appreciate what Senator Thayer was saying related to how the citizens will be allowed to be in or be a part, as they should be, a part of our legislative process. I hope that does happen. I hope we find safe ways through CDC guidelines, but I hope we don't downplay the situation that we're in. I think on the national level, the fact that it's been downplayed so much that we're still in this situation. We're still going to have the COVID experience much through this session, if not the whole session. But we need to be prepared. And I think the governor has been very cognizant of that. He's looked at some of the things that he's done and said, hey, that may not have been perfect, but in the heat of the moment in March and April, I think he's done an excellent job overall.
All right, thank you. Representative Banta, any thoughts on Representative Maddox's bill that would curtail some of the governor's executive authority? And then any thoughts you would have on the COVID situation and any COVID-related bills that you may be working on or supporting?
I did co-sponsor her bill because I don't think that anybody should have as much power over our citizens that is currently going on. But I also am open to other ideas to make sure that citizens' voices can be heard regarding it. And I have no COVID bills currently. I think that'll be covered. And I'm staring at Buddy. Pat, did I lose you? Hi, Buddy.
I did.
Well, while Pat's coming back on, let me just add in something, if I could, that I think is important that kind of to bridge what both Damon and Buddy said. We need to pass something that works for any and all governors. This is not an attack on the current governor. I think if the situation were obviously we would have had the situation had Governor Bevin been reelected, and I don't think any of us really realized the scope of 39A where these emergency powers sit. And I think there would have been some of these changes made either way, and we need to do them in such a way that we're happy with them no matter who's governor.
Okay, great. I dropped off there for a minute. My computer went down, and all of a sudden, Adam Koenig appeared. Welcome, Mr. Chairman. Representative Banta, did you get a chance to answer that, or did you get cut off too?
It's fine.
Okay.
I would concur with Representative Koenig. It's not an attack on the current governor. We just need to make sure that constitutionally we're doing what's right for citizens.
Okay. And
Pat,
yes.
Let me jump in here again. I'd like to point out that when Matt Bevin was governor, the Republican legislature started a move to restrict some executive branch authority. Even then, we made it harder for an executive to implement a regulation, adding more public comment period and doubling the amount of time before a reg could go into effect. And when I also remind that President Stivers pre-filed a bill that would have changed the governor's influence over the transportation cabinet to make it less political. And when he did that, we all thought Matt Bevin was going to be reelected governor. At the end of the day, we are very concerned about reestablishing the three co-equal branches of government as our founding fathers intended. It had been getting out of whack through the last couple of governors, and now it's completely disproportionate to what was the original intent through this pandemic. And it's time to reel the executive branch back in, Republican or Democrat. We're going to change what the governorship looks like in Kentucky for this governor and all future governors, no matter the party.
Representative Moser, you haven't had a chance to weigh in on this one yet. Any thoughts on this discussion?
Absolutely. I would agree that 39A is antiquated and needs to be updated. We certainly, when this was written, it was never anticipated that we would be dealing with a pandemic or with a governor who hasn't collaborated in any way. And I think that honestly, if he had collaborated with with his co-equal branches of government, that this wouldn't probably be an issue. We just haven't had a way to really weigh in and represent our constituents, and that is the frustration. There are courts who are arguing the constitutionality of these the executive orders, and I think that that'll be determined separately from what we do, obviously. But yeah, we are looking at several bills which have been pre-filed. I'm looking at all of them. I like pieces of all of the bills and haven't really seen a bill that is as complete as it needs to be. As far as any COVID-related bills that I'm working on, I've considered, just before session ended, I actually passed a resolution to implement or to create the Emergency Preparedness Task Force. And so that was a big discussion at the end of session. We all kind of saw the writing on the wall that we were not prepared for this. And how do we think about being prepared for this, better prepared for any state of emergency? And I think that, clearly now we know a lot more than we did in February and March, and we have a lot more information. We certainly have a different perspective on how this has affected businesses, hospitals, healthcare, education, the justice system, you name it. It has affected every single thing that we do in state government, and our constituents are greatly affected. And so I think all of these need to be part of the conversation moving forward, not just in reforming 39A. I think that we, and I have drafted a piece of legislation to establish an advisory council moving forward to make sure that we understand what it is we need to be prepared for in case of not just a pandemic. I mean, certainly if we can handle a pandemic, I think we can handle an ice storm. But, as I think Senator Thayer said, there are lots of different, maybe it was Representative Wheatley, I apologize if I mixed you all up, but what we need to be prepared for. So I'm working on that. I think that's a conversation that needs to be part of any update or any reform. From the Health and Family Services standpoint, I'm working on telehealth and some of the issues that have come about and really have been utilized and are probably a silver lining, one of few silver linings in this whole pandemic. But certainly telehealth and any virtual sort of check-ins. I mean, obviously we're able to stay connected here. through the use of technology. And I think that we need to enhance that across our state. We need to make sure that underserved areas have access to broadband. So I think that there are a lot of pieces of telehealth and virtual meetups and check-ins that we can utilize in state government.
All right, great, thank you. All right, let's go back to Senator Thayer as the floor leader in the Senate. It's a short session, but I think for the first time, there's going to be, just explain the budget situation, Senator, and how Kentucky operates on a 2-year budget, but last year you passed just a 1-year operating budget, so you have to come back in and pass the budget in this session, correct?
That's right. So just a little civics update. Until 20 years ago, the legislature only met every other year in even numbered years for 60 days. The Constitution was changed by a vote of the people to allow annual sessions. But in the odd year session coming up, it's only 30 days. Near the end of last year's session, when COVID hit, we made a decision to pass a 1-year budget instead of a 2-year budget because we didn't feel that we could accurately predict what revenues would be in the second year of the biennium that begins on July 1st, 2021, because we didn't know at that time, and we still don't really know, the long-term effects of COVID. By the way, the longer the governor keeps this economy quasi shut down, the longer the recovery is going to be, and the lower state revenues are going to be. So with that little sidebar note, when we come back in January, we have to pass another 1-year budget, and that's really 6 or 7 bills. You've got to pass the executive branch budget, the legislative branch budget, the judicial branch budget, the second year of the 2-year road budget, the funding mechanism for that, the operational budget for that, et cetera. So if we had nothing else to deal with, that is a big burden to carry for 138 members of the legislature, on top of the fact that we're going to have all the other bills that are going to be brought by folks from all over the state, not to mention the things we have to do to help businesses recover, like liability reform, plus the bills that we plan to do to limit executive authority during a state of emergency. We've got a lot to do in 30 days. And we to use a term my mother used to use, we can't dilly-dally. We've got to get right to it, starting on the first day, and begin our work, getting bills to committees and out of committee onto the floor for a vote, and get things moving, because there's really not time to waste.
How bad is the budget situation going to be?
Well, it's too soon to tell. Some of the numbers are coming in a little better than expected. And remember, we budgeted to the most pessimistic version of the revenue forecast provided to us by the nonpartisan consensus forecasting group. But I saw that in the most recent quarter that the revenues were up a little bit. Remember, we're primarily a sales and income tax state. So that's a sign that economic activity is starting to improve. But remember, we budgeted to the worst possible number. So it's too soon to say whether we're going to have to make further cuts. I would say the best case scenario is probably a flatline budget, pretty similar to the one we're operating under right now, which again, remember, that's the worst case scenario. Interestingly enough, in the road fund, which is funded by the gas tax and the motor vehicle sales tax when you buy a new car, the amount of money coming from the gas tax has gone down because people are driving less. Still a lot of people working from home, et cetera. But the money coming in from the motor vehicle tax on new cars is up because people are buying new cars. For example, right down the road for me in Georgetown at the Toyota plant, they're basically at full production capacity right now because of the demand for new cars. So just some interesting little tidbits there.
Speaking of gas tax, are you for an increase in the gas tax?
No.
All right.
I try though.
All right, let me go to Representative.
This is the absolute worst time to raise taxes on people in a pandemic, when we've still got a lot of uncertainty in the economy and a lot of people still unemployed. And by the way, a lot of people who still haven't gotten their checks from unemployment. All
right, let me go to Representative Koenig. Representative Koenig, I want to ask you about your committee chairman, but I also want to ask you about any budget priorities you have, and then also, are you going to run your sports book bill again?
Absolutely. And let me just say that the other three House members are all also on licensing occupations, and they're all good members. And we obviously see things in that committee generally the same. I don't know that I have any budget priorities other than what's some of the road projects that we've been working on, especially the road at Houston and Commonwealth, where at the old Erlanger Cinemas, where Perfetti and Coca-Cola and all those folks have located. And that is a messed up intersection at this point that cannot handle the business traffic coming in and out of it. So that's very high on my priority list. But yeah, we're gonna run sports betting again, which is going to be interesting given the outcome of the elections and who gets elected in some of these districts. Not just even Republican or Democrat, but needing a majority of the majority, whether we can get Republicans in some of these districts who are pro sports betting. And but even before that, we have to take care of the historical horse racing machine issue that the Supreme Court has ruled does not meet statute. And the chamber and others are asking for a re-review from the Supreme Court, but that is a big deal. And I think it's fair to say, and Pat, you've known me for a long time, I'm not a sky is falling sort of person. This is a really big deal that if we don't get fixed, could literally mean the end of Turfway Park, as well as other tracks in Kentucky. So it really needs to get done.
And Churchill just invested $40 million in Newport on a historic racing and simulcast.
Absolutely. And they're going to do more than that at Turfway Park itself. They've invested, along with Keeneland, hundreds of millions of dollars in a new facility in Christian County. Kentucky Downs has invested tens of millions of dollars in a new facility in Simpson County. And that's a lot of direct and indirect jobs. It's really, really important that we get that taken care of this year if the Supreme Court doesn't reverse themselves, which I'm not counting on.
Representative Banta, any thoughts on what Representative Koenig was talking about, the sports books, the historical racing, and then also any thoughts you have on the budget?
Well, I am worried about the budget. I think that I follow Representative Koenig's lead on sports wagering and betting it, because I don't think you're going to find anybody that knows more about it. We need it. I think it's good for our economy in Northern Kentucky. We've got some problems that are kind of in the background that I don't think people see that are going to have to be addressed. Updating the unemployment. We still have people that don't have unemployment. I get 5 to 10 emails a day of people needing help. We need jobs. So I can't even imagine those institutions in Northern Kentucky closing down, because we need those jobs very much.
Representative Wheatley, any thoughts on the sports book bill, the historic racing, and anything you want to say about the budget?
Yes, I concur with Representative Koenig. I think addressing the decision by the Supreme Court about historical racing machines, we're going to need to get to that probably first, and I think we have an opportunity there. This is an issue, and on this committee, even on the Senate side, I support almost everything Senator Thayer has proposed or had been in favor of related to sports betting and the horse racing industry. It's extremely important, and it's a cultural thing in Kentucky, and we have to make sure that our purses, our race purses are supported, and they are certainly supported through the historical racing machine. So that's important. Through the budget process, of course, we will have to go through this, and it's going to take up so much of our time. I hope that we can get through it rather quickly. The most pessimistic consensus forecast, we probably will have to go with that again, if not that, a very flat line like Senator Thayer was saying. And I hope that we can get through this fairly easily, fairly quickly. We have something else that's going on in Kentucky that I hope we get a little attention, if not a lot of attention, at least to get something passed related to criminal justice There has been bipartisan support related to no-knock warrants and whether or not we're going to be able to do anything with that. Another big topic that we could spend a lot of time on, but these are things that I think we'll need to address in the upcoming session.
Just real quickly, anything specific on law enforcement reform that you would like to see?
Well, the no-knock warrant situation, and there are other law enforcement, actually criminal justice bills that have bipartisan support. There is currently a task force, just a working group, actually a bipartisan. Senator Schickel is on it. Senator Stivers, myself, and a couple other Democrats, and working with the governor's office on some criminal justice reform bills having to do with bail reform, having to do with raising the limits for certain felonies, and I think some of that has an opportunity, but you get into a lot of weeds there, a lot of details, and whether or not we can get to those bills. They're important. They're very important. But whether or not we have in this 30-day session, it remains to be seen. But there is consensus there.
Yeah. For those of you who aren't used to Frankfurt, passing a budget in a 30-day session is going to be interesting. Representative Moser, there's been a lot of conversation since we last got with you, but any thoughts on gaming, historic racing, sports books, and the budget?
I'm a huge supporter of sports gaming. I've worked closely with Adam. I would like to just mention that I was pretty outspoken about adding collegiate sports again to sports gaming last session. And I think that needs to pass. Historical racing, Adam's right, we need to take care of this. Churchill Downs has invested millions, tens of millions of dollars in their infrastructure around the state. I'm supportive of whatever we need to do to support our horse racing industry and our historical gaming. A lot of the L&O issues are really economic drivers, and so it's a fun committee to be on and to really think about how we can bolster our revenues in the state. But we also need to think about how we can make cuts, and especially during COVID, for example, that the budget's going to be tricky because we have a lot of federal dollars commingling with our state dollars, and to really sort that cobweb out is going to be tricky, especially when we're not getting a lot of straight answers. And I know that there are a lot of federal CARES dollars that haven't been spent. I think only 16% of the federal dollars have been spent to date. So I'm curious about what the plan is moving forward. Again, from a health and welfare standpoint, because that's kind of where I live, I'm looking at a really problematic Medicaid expansion. We have added an additional close to 300,000 individuals onto the Medicaid rolls just during COVID. And that is because of a presumptive eligibility relaxation of some regulations that we're going to be taking a look at. And it's not to, we know that individuals need healthcare coverage, and especially during COVID, but there's got to be an off-ramp, and there has to be a plan to transition folks back from Medicaid to their employer-sponsored insurance or whatever it is they had before. So I'm looking at some sort of transitional or bridge insurance. Just having some preliminary conversations about what the plan is to get individuals off of government assistance, because right now we are facing a $12 billion Medicaid budget. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
We can't afford it.
All right, Senator Thayer, thank you, Representative Moser. I know you have to jump off, but I want to ask you, I want to get back to the sports books and historic racing. Are those bills, they going to pass your chamber?
I can't predict what will or will not pass, Pat, but I will tell you this. I'm the guy who got historical horse racing started in Kentucky. In 2009, I sent a letter to Attorney General Jack Conway and asked him the question, is historical horse racing parimutuel? His advisory opinion was, yes, it is, but it needs to be regulated by the Horse Racing Commission. That has happened, and now the historical horse racing proliferation around Kentucky at our racetracks has put Kentucky on the verge of becoming the #1 year-round horse racing circuit in North America. And we're looking at knocking on the door of New York and California, much bigger population bases there. and it's because of the purse money generated through historical horse racing. The Supreme Court was wrong. They reversed themselves on a ruling that they made 6 years ago where they said it was parimutuel. I hope they reverse their decision. This is critical. And I'll tell you something that many people don't know. Churchill Downs has canceled its steel order to rebuild Turfway Park, and they have ceased construction on the new building. Now, I worked in that old building in the 90s for 8 years. And it was a little bittersweet to see it torn down, including my office where I used to work right there above the valet parking circle, but it needed to be done. And we owe Churchill Downs a debt of gratitude for its commitment to Northern Kentucky's economy by rebuilding Turfway Park. But it's not going to happen if we don't get clarity on historical horse racing. And I am a sky is falling kind of guy when it comes to this situation. You will see the demise of our year-round racing circuit in Kentucky if something doesn't happen regarding historical horse racing. And I appreciate the support of the people in the legislature who are on this call. You can see that it's a bipartisan support for it. I also support Representative Koenig's sports betting bill and hope we can get to it as well. But the priority clearly is figuring out a solution to save historical horse racing and our 100,000 job, $3 billion economic impact signature industry in Kentucky. Thanks. Again, I've got to duck off for yet another Zoom call, but thanks to the CBC and St. Elizabeth and Charter for sponsoring the call. I'm out.
All right, great. Thank you, Senator Thayer. And Pat Frew just pointed out that we have a question from one of your former colleagues, everybody on the call, or many of you on the call, Alicia Webb-Edgington. So Alicia asked, thank you for speaking to us today about the pending legislation for 2021. Has there been any indications from the executive branch when the Kentucky Career Center will be allowed to open in Northern Kentucky to address unemployment claims, concerns, and disputes? And she thanks all of you for your service. Anyone on the call want to handle that one?
I'll jump in, Pat. You know, I know there has been a bill, and I think Representative Banta has alluded to this too, that yeah, the career centers, we did lose in-person contact for unemployment claims. Now that's just related to that particular issue, but I think there's at least one bill to create these career centers, to reopen them in. Gosh, I think there might be like 16 of these career centers that are possible to be opened if we pass the legislation. Of course, you know, this costs money. So we're in a budget year, unusually so, but we're in a budget year. So it'll be a difficult thing. I hope we look at it. I like Representative Moser's concept of, you know, creating task force to study things, to get a good idea, get everybody to the table, see what works out, see if we can work this out, see if we can scale it up when it comes times like this, a great need for unemployment insurance claims, and maybe able to scale it down certain times. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of talk about that.
Anything else? Any other insights in that one?
I think you covered it.
Okay. We just got about a couple minutes here. One more time, I'd just like to ask each of you, go through the list. We'll start with you, Representative Koenig. I think I know the answer to this, but what are your any personal priorities you have, any bills you're going to be running, or anything you're going to be particularly watching?
Well,
your colleagues.
Besides what we've talked about, we're going to need to do some cleanup on the direct shipment of alcohol bill, which we passed this year. The regulations are coming out from the administration, frankly, overly burdensome and a little frustrating for me. So we're going to have to do some fixes that way via statute changes. And once again, I will be attempting, although I'll be modifying it a little bit, but if we're going to talk about criminal justice reform, we need to start with the 500 some constables running around this state who have no training and can arrest people and have all the police powers that what we call policemen, what we're used to having as policemen, have. And so I think that needs to be an important part of any criminal justice reform. And I'm not trying to get rid of them anymore, but if you're not POP certified, you shouldn't have any police powers.
Okay. Representative Banta, anything personally that you're going to be working on or watching this session?
I don't see her on here. I think she.
Yeah, I don't know if she's
got
still
out.
here.
All right. How about you, Representative Wheatley?
Yeah, I want to mention a couple things, Pat. One is an infrastructure need that really will help Covington, and that's the moving up the priority of the 4th Street Bridge. I hope my Northern Kentucky caucus members will support this too. I've been supportive of the 536 project that out in southern Kenton County, which is extremely important for cross-county travel there for our employers, employees, and travelers. But the replacement of the 4th Street Bridge that connects Covington and Newport is paramount. It becomes even more necessary that we move this up in priority with the redevelopment of the IRS site, which is coming. So we need a lot of foresight with this type of work. And as I talked a little bit earlier, probably before we were, I think, on the air, walkable, bikeable communities and attaching the Riverfront Commons project to the 4th Street Bridge is also going to be very important. And also personally, I'll be working on some voting issues. I really like the bipartisan agreement that is in place for this particular election. And hopefully we can advance at least some of those ideas going forward.
Okay. And finally, Representative Moser, any final thoughts on what you're working on?
Well, I have a long list of things that I'm working on.
Please do.
But I have pre-filed, outside of the COVID things that we've talked about, I've pre-filed a mental health parity bill that will align state mental health coverage through third-party payers and insurance companies and probably even state plans, Medicaid, to align with the federal mental health parity law. And right now we know that they don't cover mental health in the same way that they cover other health issues. I'm also working on a bill that is probably going to be pretty interesting to the business community. It's called Certification of Employability. It is a reentry bill, and I'm looking for ways to give employers some liability protections when they hire individuals who have shown that they have worked hard to improve their life and their situation, either through treatment and continuing education, so forth. And this is really for incarcerated individuals. I am also working on a tobacco preemption repeal bill, and that would give local control, that would give control over tobacco marketing really back to cities and counties. And really it's about getting, repealing some laws to give control back to our local communities. Talked about telehealth and the advisory council. On the criminal justice reform side of things, I'm looking for, again, a virtual check-in to reduce the barriers to individuals checking in with probation and parole, and to just make it easier for individuals to comply with all of the rules that we put in place when they are trying to get their lives back together. And there are a lot more. I'm working on TAC reentry, community health workers. The list is long. So,
Right.
Yep.
Representative Kim Moser, Senate Floor Leader Damon Thayer, Representative Adam Koenig, Representative Buddy Wheatley, Representative Kim Banta. Thank you so much for joining us today. Very insightful, covered a lot of ground. See you down in Frankfurt, and I'll turn it back over to Pat Frew. Patrick?
Pat, thank you very much. Representatives Moser, Koenig, and Wheatley, and also Representative Banta and Senator Thayer, who had to drop off early. We do appreciate your participation today and appreciate your service to our community. I also want to thank our sponsors today, St. Elizabeth Healthcare and Charter Communications. Join us for our next virtual luncheon, November 19th, when we hear from Guy Van Ruin of the Sawyers Group about the second phase of their development of the 600 block of Madison. As you may have heard, this was launched over a year ago. It'll involve a bourbon distillery, VIP and presidential suites as part of Hotel Covington, and office space. And this is where the former YMCA and Gateway College bookstore used to be housed. You won't want to miss that. So have a great weekend. Get out and enjoy this beautiful scenery that we have and the leaves and everything. Thanks for joining us. This concludes today's virtual luncheon. Have a good day.
thank you. Don't forget to vote.
Yes, vote November 3rd.
Right.